The story of the dwarf. In ancient times, there was a tale known as the story of the dwarf. This story begins with a lineage of rulers known as the deity clan. They were renowned for their generosity and kindness. The son of one such ruler was named Vajraja, who also possessed a benevolent heart. Vajraja fathered a son named Bali, who from a young age was a devout follower of the great deity Vishnu. He never missed an opportunity to worship Vishnu and always conducted himself according to the deity's preferences and advice. Bali resided in the Purification Forest and studied under the guidance of the sage Taibai Venus. He meticulously attended to Taibai Venus's needs and desires, earning the sage's admiration. Taibai Venus eventually decided to conduct a ritual to bless Bali. During the ritual, something miraculous occurred. In addition to the sacred flames, several divine treasures appeared in the sacrificial fire basin: a suit of divine armor, a celestial chariot, a divine bow, and an inexhaustible pot of arrows. Bali was adorned with a beautiful garland that would remain fresh forever. Bali understood that Vishnu had been moved by his devotion and bestowed these treasures upon him. With these divine gifts as his arsenal, Bali conquered the mortal realm and then the terrestrial realm, becoming a renowned king. Many brave warriors pledged their allegiance to him, faithfully serving by his side. Having unified the mortal and terrestrial realms, Bali naturally sought to conquer the celestial realm of Indra, the king of gods. In order to make all three realms obey his command, his valiant warriors received his command and launched a relentless assault on the celestial realm. In this dire situation, Indra, fearing the loss of his domain, urgently sought help from his chief priest, Jupiter. The chief priest, having reflected on the situation, advised, "O king of the gods, your anxiety is futile. The power of time is both mysterious and mighty, and no one can oppose the will of the god of time. Bali's rapid rise to power is closely related to the full support of the god of time. Regardless of the means you employ, you cannot stop Bali's advance. If you try to resist him forcibly, you may face repercussions. It is better to retreat for now. When the god of time no longer favors Bali, it will be our time to resist him and reclaim the celestial realm." Indra followed the priest's advice, leading the gods to vacate the celestial realm and surrendering it to Bali. With the three realms under his control, Bali wielded supreme divine authority, and none dared oppose him. Jupiter believed Bali to be invincible and suggested holding a horse sacrifice to showcase his accomplishments. Bali agreed and ordered the Brahmin scholars of the Bharadwaja clan to conduct the sacrifice at the Bharadwaja mound on the banks of the Narumada River. Before long, the preparations for the sacrifice were complete, and the priests loudly announced the commencement of the ritual. The gods, now bereft of the celestial realm, had no place to call home and wandered aimlessly. Seeing her son's sorrowful state, the heavenly mother Aditi was deeply distressed and sought counsel from the sage Gautama. Aditi lamented, "Gautama, have you not heard the rumors of Bali's occupation of the celestial realm? My poor children have lost their home. As a mother, my heart aches. Do you have any solution to reunite my sons with their heavenly abode?" Gautama replied, "I know that your sons are blameless in this matter, and Bali's actions are outrageous. However, we cannot take action against him, for he is under the protection of the great deity Vishnu. Only the deity himself can intervene to save your sons. I happen to know the prayers and rituals to worship Vishnu. Learn them devoutly and pray to Vishnu to deal with Bali." Only then may your sons have a chance to return to the celestial realm. Aditi followed Gautama's advice and fervently prayed to Vishnu on behalf of her suffering sons. Touched by her maternal love, Vishnu manifested himself and inquired about her wishes. Aditi tearfully recounted the plight of her sons. Unable to bear her tears, Vishnu immediately said, "Do not weep anymore. I will send a dwarf to be born from your womb, and he shall descend into the world to reclaim what rightfully belongs to your sons." The following morning, Aditi gave birth to the incarnation of a dwarf god. He possessed a remarkable appearance, with eyes radiating brilliance and a resolute countenance. Those who saw him could not help but praise, "What a magnificent young man!" The gods sent their blessings, grateful to Vishnu for championing their cause. The dwarf god comforted the celestial beings and departed from the heavenly mother, heading to the Bharadwaja mound to attend Burli's horse sacrifice. Dressed in coarse clothing with a belt made of reeds and wearing wooden clogs, his appearance immediately earned the respect of all the Brahmin scholars and sages present. Sensing his extraordinariness, they all greeted him and welcomed him warmly. Burli felt strangely familiar upon seeing the unique ascetic and suspected him to be none other than the great deity Vishnu himself. With reverence, he invited the dwarf god to take a seat and proactively offered, "Honorable ascetic, your presence adds much splendor to my sacrifice. Why have you come? Please state your request, and I shall endeavor to fulfill it." The dwarf god replied solemnly, "Generous king, you have inherited the generosity of your forefathers and are never stingy toward others. However, as an ascetic, I seek nothing but a piece of land measuring 3 steps in length. I hope you can grant this request." Burli asked in astonishment, "The entire universe belongs to me. If you desire land, you may have a whole country, a mountain, or a grassland. Why ask for a mere 3 steps of land? Are you jesting with me?" The dwarf god responded earnestly, "Noble king, I am not jesting or being unreasonable. As an ascetic, I have no need for wealth or territory. 3 steps of land are all I desire, nothing more." Burli, no longer debating, prepared to fulfill the dwarf god's request. However, Thaibai Venus, noticing the unusual request, intervened. "Stop. Burli, do you not recognize this ascetic as the great deity Vishnu? His request for land is surely not ordinary. He intends to use this as a means to reclaim the celestial realm for the gods." Burli responded, "Master, from my youth until now, I have never refused anyone's request, regardless of my personal feelings. Moreover, if indeed it is the great deity Vishnu making the request, how could I, as his loyal follower, refuse? Even if he stands with the gods, I must yield." Ignoring Thaibai Venus's warnings, Burli turned to the dwarf god and said, "Noble ascetic, I am prepared to grant your request. Please choose your land." The dwarf god smiled and replied, "Generous king, I only require 3 steps of land. The first step shall measure the distance between your throne and my seat. The second step shall extend as far as the earth, and the third step shall encompass all that is visible and invisible." Burli, with a heavy heart, consented to the dwarf god's request. However, Thaibai Venus, still anxious, whispered to him, "Burli, do not be deceived. Vishnu's plan is to reclaim the celestial realm by taking 3 steps. If you allow him to do so, the gods will regain their lost kingdom, and you will face their wrath. Prevent him at all costs." Burli, realizing the gravity of the situation, prepared to stop the dwarf god by any means necessary. As the dwarf god lifted his foot to take the first step, Burli, with a surge of divine energy, flung his divine spear at the dwarf god's chest, intending to halt his advance. But a miraculous event unfolded. As soon as the spear left Burleigh's hand, the dwarf god transformed into a colossal form, expanding to encompass the entire universe. With one step, he spanned the distance between the earth and the celestial realm. With the second step, he transcended the celestial realm and entered the celestial kingdom, reclaiming it for the gods. The third step enveloped all that was visible and invisible, establishing Vishnu's divine supremacy. Witnessing this awe-inspiring sight, the assembled Brahmin scholars and sages fell to their knees in reverence. Taibai Venus and Burleigh realized their folly and bowed before the dwarf god, seeking his forgiveness. Vishnu, pleased with Burleigh's humility and understanding, spoke kindly, "Burleigh, you have displayed great devotion and generosity, yet you also succumb to pride and arrogance. Remember, true greatness lies in humility. Be wise and just in your rule, and your kingdom shall flourish for eternity." With these words, Vishnu vanished from sight, leaving behind a sense of peace and harmony. Burleigh, humbled by the experience, ruled with wisdom and compassion, ensuring prosperity for his kingdom for generations to come.